it soon.
We get a flow chart up, and I'll be good.
I have like Lucas's copy of that title.
It seems like the unimportant email to receive.
Yeah.
You on the email this way.
I have you on the chain, it's weird.
Is in your spam by any chance?
Okay.
It might have not watching.
Yeah.
That's so disrespectful.
I appreciate that I'm not spam to you, but I'm good.
Once you have it up.
Yeah. I'm good.
Okay, great. Advantage 1 is monopsonies, wealth consolidation for mergers and acquisitions. The U.S. mega deals is skyrocketing now, proudly 25. Do make reach 2.6 trillion high sense of pandemic surge in AI, overcome uncertainty used by U.S. mega deals and more than 10 billion more to come. Companies pursuing bigger deals on the frothy market. U.S. biggest more than half global activity, and the result is rampant collusion that undermines labor market competition and boxes in unions, bargaining power, Mancini and Sidebomb 25. Labor market embedded in collective bargaining, CBA ranks and straight job searching locus and competition. The bargaining table labor ranks exacerbate competitive effects of merger review. The DOJ rank to seek to be more sensitive labor concentration. Merger eliminates employer rivalry in the United States, reducing unions options and leverage increasing employer market power and worse labor standards. Ultimate material terms CBAs including wage benefits, job security, worker condition, coordinated conduct, directly retains union bargaining, leverage resistant demand, so employers suppress competition that historically benefit workers. Merger review must incorporate bargaining based under the toolkit, and monopsonistic labor competition through collusion artificially suppresses wages and spikes market concentration. Fees 18. Monopsonistic employers pay lower wages, lead to inefficiency redistribution of employers' competitive market bid. Wages up to tracking productivity. Commerce organized monopsony based on collusion on wage setting. Incumbents are cheated from pressure. Collective bargaining becomes shadow puppetry. Employer depressed below competitive level with willing purchase of labor, now losing out their employers' labor for a job. Employee symmetry support monopsony collude. Employers collude to fix wages and evidence suppress wages through economic regressions, and that causes long-term economic decline from secular stagnation through falling wage shares. Cicero and Tabani 25. The increase in income and inequality, long-run decline, labor productivity, growth, secular stagnation, U.S. economic power moving away from labor, consistent reduction of the bargaining power, workers declining, unionization related to lower wage levels, weakening, especially significant rising market concentration, evolution of market power, decline in labor share, the direct relation of the decline in labor power, produce reduction in natural growth in economy, wage level because of supply forces, and slow growth fuels revisionist conflict initiation. Judge 24. Saturated economic slowdown, increase the likelihood of conflict leaders facing unrest, seek to return initiating conflict, scholars attribute rising powers, aggression and domestic problems, Ukraine annexation of Crimea, China's sort of action, the SCS structure time war revision because our economies went down, slow growth contributed to conflict initiation makes one state weaker and leaders more vulnerable, increase of foreign aggression, worsening economies of drive safety of aggressive states, and extinction from hotspot escalation. Brands 25. U.S. order generated peace threats have been mounting in international through economic decline, possibility breakdown is growing. Washington use economic power to boy like minded China, Russia, Iran, are challenging threats. Economic supremacy, currency, cyberpunk, obviously challenges in Europe, Middle East, Asia are searching resources and risks in Iraq, threats China's preparing for war, causing nuclear escalation, alliances, fracture orders implode. When power can't sustain economic system, American order must rest on economic pills, by neutral war with also sustain global power, pay for military, they keep provisions and check reinforce leadership behind allies, and rising inequality triggers a civil war. Church in 23. Which applies to administration and legal production of support drivers of instability, full-blown civil war, radicalization, spreads, revolutionary groups, style relationship is non-linear, explosive growth, balance shift, regime implode, singles work, conservative fire, relationship is power, law, normal sex, and work, relative wage, turn on wealth, mobility increase, both high levels of radicalization, cover exposed during the 2020s, Virginia outbreak of serious violence, and that causes nuclear use in every theater. Stars 24. Over the next months, the concern is hunger, democracy would take even the U.S. cannot practice what it preaches adversaries take advantage of division, pursue regional aims, you can escalate time, over the conflict around citrus and weapons remain serious. Korea has an universal experts survey 30 contingencies only to reload probability peace become impossible, prevention must begin home, and the plan resolves by requiring employees to bargain over the merger review process. Unions bargaining power fills in the gaps of failing antitrust enforcement. Positive 24. Kroger Appleton sparked objection from unions question about the role of unions in merger review ad hoc involvement on a common record. Sure, unions well motivated to participate in negotiations of merger review benefits from development unions antitrust disregard labor market events, giving unions a seat at the table addresses well positioned to assess the impacts provided by the info. Otherwise, overlooked argument for union involvement strong included the right to block mergers and create a legally enforceable right, and the plan's structured bargaining is key to maximizing the benefits of union involvement. Positive 24. Merger review tradition of cost benefit analysis of evidence suggests merger review unsuccessful alternative structure bargain between unions and mergers been overseen by agencies when first proposed merger agents are appointed by union with service agents required to negotiate merger. Locked unless all agents agree union will have the right to block merger regulators to protect others union involvement in merger that costs from producing bargaining costs where unions negotiate the terms of merger under agency supervision, and that enables interagency review of mergers which solves through info sharing and expertise. Have fees 20. I'm going to be uniquely situated to assess merger effects, expertise, and extensive industry specific data about key indicators, law violation, expert analysis, info sharing with the ULA analysis of mergers market effects critical for reviewing the employee's ability to engage in competent impact workers joining agency jurisdiction accurately assess the impacts, data analysis integrated into the evaluation of merging parties by the burden of establishing whether the board should approve merger. Thus, the plan, the United States federal government should substantially strengthen the mandatory subjects of collective bargaining rights for workers over merger review, and advantage 2 is industry's antitrust law is structurally incapable of merger enforcement, only giving a role for unions countervails the negative impacts of market concentration. Fees 20. Current approach to antitrust merger review fundamentally limited impact of doctrinal evolution of antitrust deeper impacts on institutional culture and expertise of agencies. Neither agency ever blocked a merger based on the market concentration alignment economic capitalist assumes employers cannot wage discriminate, demonstrating continued primacy and consumer worker growth a long history of recognition, antitrust agency of insufficient expertise in labor market regulations, successful merger enforcement, ensuring vibrant competition, bolster any antitrust condition and remedies or even preemptive mergers, adverse effects, union service countervailing power effects, monopoly, establishing for the board of merger review, developing stronger regulation, and concentration over leading AI labor markets causes extinction, led at all 23. Dominant tech firms, long track record of surveilling workers made worse by Gen AI, combined with monopoly power in the long industry to become dependent on a small number of tech giants, concentrates control over innovation, concentrates systemic risk threats, and resilience on systems in which society depends, only allow a few powerful corporates to control leading large-scale AI models and cloud and set systems to fail outright failure AI service and provided by the solid monopoly, potentially existential cascading effects across key industries and systems you face in this info, autonomous vehicles are AI-regulated, grid market concentration, amplify problems when things go wrong, and evolved surveillance is its own existential risk. COVID-19, pretty possible to find every person in terms of applicant reinforced beliefs like dominant I will try an existence around such a people who produce food sustainably, oppose oil and coal, public governments and wheels of power spine could easily sound warning birds who speak out about recession, increase the likelihood of extinction, and now is key to averting billions being concentrated in tech giants. Shilov 25, NVIDIA investment in 100 billion open AI, raising major such as concerns of market balance based on 500 billion. Valuation for open AI, US regulators, flag some major tech firms leveraging their dominance emphasize burning exclusionary practice in AI supply chain effects, extend beyond hardware, and merger review solves AI market concentration by overcoming uncertainty and the knowledge problem. Fraser 25, antitrust regulations approach acquisition AI danger consequences in the ecosystem moved by the giants. Killer acquisition of regulatory scrutiny because targeted small acquisition to profit more competitive market antitrust sale equipped to press court struggle to define lessening competition and ambiguity limits the act prophylactic intent the defendant must better knowledge market and acquisition in the context of AI like knowledge understanding accuracy renders existing legal frame support for AI acquisition in rapid pace creates significant uncertainty for powerful incentive to acquire sort of false economy between curtail acquisition and encourage sort of evidence suggests robust venture capital can thrive alongside engaged merger review regimes and independently big tech consolidation fuels Chinese digital authoritarianism. Satarma 20, big tech assists China and the Chinese government is leveraged over the years regular companies would create new ecosystem which marketplace not dependent on Chinese because markets and states are independent interaction with Chinese companies pass along tech military and ways that accelerate digital authoritarianism and US companies developing AI and China supporting the Chinese military, Chinese companies which ties the Communist Party create and incentive for companies to comply with the party and digital authoritarianism is inevitable existential. Donovan 21, AI tech is facilitating digital authoritarianism, tech and social system to lens the system rapid spread through economic coercion and concerted efforts that influence standard setting service examples of China role model of AI-driven domestic oppression, effective control over info China's exporting repressive capacities, advancing in governance like separate sovereignty, oppression generally criticized by external actors, government striking as the existential therapist by digital auth models, and it also causes cyber attacks to on 20. Strong competition complements cybersecurity, security is value-added competitive markets, security gain, natural research confirms or competitors correlated with faster cyber response and absent competition developers, I can respond to vulnerabilities best way to flush out cyber issue, maintain competitive approach for monopoly, least on medical training, best needs to predatory genius, elements of security possibilities, or organic software vulnerabilities, only 1% applied to substitutes, and the spread through interlinked systems, extinction act in 20. User malicious exacerbated cyber vulnerabilities, existing vulnerabilities, intensify fears of industry, espionage, mistaken for attack, over info into IT could accidentally spread into nuclear systems, cyber attacks, and bad time for kind of force soda down, early warning, mistake, interpreted, ambiguous indicators on the world site. When a system malfunction attributed failure to cyber attack states to remove files, repeatedly delegated and leading to invert news fields command or use other guidance on a PNC. Dual use delivery represent a point of contact between C3 and the US networks not supporting a dual use are connected, and hospital mergers are independently threatened to worsen nursing shortages that collapse healthcare to Pascal 20. Nurses and shortage of market for nurses and non-opsy, power nurses are particularly susceptible to relative mobility during skills on hospital and opsy. Vacancies are chronic shortages exacerbating the shortage when hospital consideration merger rate begin decreasing competition while hospitals are major players they can leverage those jobs to non-opsy power in multiple markets with hospital mergers have significant effects on the market for nursing unionization may affect non-opsy and you present presence of protect nurses shortage for the country risk for understaffed hospitals that have community care because it will go for labor non-opsy so negatively affect welfare and effective healthcare solves existential risk from pandemics and bioterm let 17 health security reduced bioterm where pandemics prevent at least 20% of pandemics mitigation will be effective regardless of whether American originates after labor delivery ability to detect and characterize helps fast track health strengthening healthcare would help mitigate all types of existential risk include bioterror reducing exercise million times more cost effective and future pandemics are likely more lethal and spur bioterror attacks red pill 23 pandemic 50 times more likely than corona millions of high risk or your pandemic in the United States getting caused by biotransmission or accidents you not transmission or accidental leak first terrorists using biological weapons most seriously seen to have provoked by our security issue and unions and collective bargaining make antitrust checks on labor and product markets effective Pellicine v. His on 23 labor not type resource for antitrust workers you underutilized resources of information but effects of merger also ineffective under employer power unions articulated health sector versus monopoly power moves beyond consumer welfare workers expert market participants sort of on type experience software HCC merger review workers deeply informed product markets and industry conditions like they know where the bodies are where they should be brought to the merger review process central role in the process dominated by lowers with the launch collective bargaining as a structural remedy to concentrated corporate power which negotiate and available remedy to monopoly power effects sense beyond workers directly covered by evidence of spillovers and bioweapons cause extinction Johan 25 Gene engineering confirms synthetic bios alter disease biowarfare is now engineered weapon that can help beyond control commodity events allowed disease be engineered with specific targets mutation and programmed evolution pathogens allowed to delay remain dormant before triggering mutation pre-programmed ensuring long-term predictability bypassing immune response even after clots bioengineering pathogens and they constantly evolve recovering possible survivors so genetically altered globalization which is not part of the planet and so from the systemic power clots will trigger cascading power survives rapidly across every system so we're to escape to Give me 1 second to get the timer up.
Okay.
Civil wars, how do they go nuclear?
They go nuclear or star as evidence indicates that domestic strife via civil war both hurts our relationship with allies and causes adversary aggression.
It says America's ability to promote democracy. Where does it say like civil war would prevent that?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious that that would happen. In terms of the star as evidence, it talks about a homegrown problem, other forms of political violence. It's clearly talking about like
Violence was actually not highlighted, but okay, sure. Your normal means
there's
is
other parts of the
NLRB.
card that talk about this.
Normal means is NLRB.
That's a part of it. The last piece evidence. Like, I guess, like, what do you mean by like normal means?
Like the agency that would like oversee the bargaining process.
Yeah, we think it's the last piece evidence kind of speaks to this. The NLRB would be a part of it. It also talks about department sharing with the DOL and the EEOC could aid towards analysis of mergers, market effects.
Okay, I want to talk about this like info sharing stuff. Like, does the plan fiat that?
It is not a mandate of the plan, but a like normal means enforcement of the plan.
How? Like, what evidence have you read that speaks to the fact that like normal means, like the Hafiz evidence, all it says is that they're like uniquely situated to assess merger effects.
I would say the Posner evidence right above that sort of draws the connection between these two things about how union involvement in merger review would inherently involve the NLRB.
So Posner actually doesn't say NLRB once, doesn't say DOL, doesn't say any agency. What part of this card do you think gets to agencies?
Sage?
I mean, like, I think that the fees evidence is good enough. Like, I don't.
So we're back to Hafiz now. Okay. What about it? It just says they're uniquely situated.
Yeah, I mean, like, the NLRB would oversee the plan. I don't know why that's.
Why?
I'm just confused about why this is even a line of questioning. Like, the NLRB covers labor issues. The plan says that antitrust or merger review should be a question of labor and like should be enforced.
Yeah.
by
So I
unions.
guess like,
obviously
the
the
question I'm
NLRB
kind of getting at is like, what evidence have you read that like is a solvency advocate for the NLRB doing the plan?
like the fees. It's like the
What
first
part of this
sentence.
card?
The NLRB is uniquely like even you quote.
Yeah, no, for info sharing, for like what part of this card says that they are key for blocking mergers and acquisitions?
It's expert-
It's not the NLRB that blocks the merger fees.
Well, yeah, but
It's
they
the union.
oversee and they enforce the bargaining agreements that allow companies to stop companies from merging. What piece of evidence have you read in this entire 1AC that advocates for that?
Quote, the NLRB is uniquely situated because of its expertise and extensive industry-specific data
Uniquely situated for what?
to assess labor market merger
But it doesn't say to
effects.
stop them. Like what part
Well,
of this
it would
evidence
be
is
the
good for
unions
stopping
that
them?
would like say like we do not want this merger to go through, and then it would be enforced. Like they would just not allow the merger to go through.
I could just like read this whole card again.
Okay, it's all good. Alright, we're sending 1AC.
7, monopsony industries.
I'm trying to get it.
It's all good.
I don't think it's going to be. It also like fell. Yeah, I did this like halfway through the speech and it was recording me, and I was like, I don't like that. So I'm trying to fix that, but I think it's lost cause.
It's all good.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you're in the frame, but you said 8.
7.
7.
Not that bad.
Okay. Re-download and I'll be good.
First off, is hospitality strengthening collective bargaining rights that already exist in law. Can so DTT aims to strengthen against the
through engage workers are now one law not sufficiently the scope of current collective bargaining rights is limited to wages, hours, and conditions of employment hardware. 19 of which collective bargaining collectively most commonly just provides for however negotiate wages or term conditions. The employment violation depends on the scope of collective bargaining rights and use subject matter about negative elements. Their interpretation justifies adding any aspect of employment from corporate governance director of management. Union negotiations make them impossible to ground coordinate offense. Like econ and politics are based on changing the employee relationship directly. Their terms courses is based on allowing any aspect of government to be part of collective bargaining. Next up is the capital. It's unsustainable and coded to extinction effort to provide the developer to limit the growth of German just of course not running to extra condition to any alternatives for sustainable development of needs for releasing the water feeding energy mutual conscious changes offset and provide and causes risk of continuing back to the growth of result region. Sometimes control over cloud metal dark saying and false wheels to communities and first construction out of cloud vision. When you was holding the energy with batching the cycles and use down for substance water and it's necessary for already exceeding the two reforms such as capital reach war like capital data and capital first development having no way. The source of limits innovation can take such as reactor chemical disasters increase any impact on natural world and accuracy advantage. Minimum between age of fake news and knowledge of pressure complexity competition difficult complexity reasons simply for education some causes having grants to community to have risk of crisis called limited property privacy connected with CI fin crisis many property condition multiple terrorism causes different harmony for crisis when you local photo over minimum accident discharge reactor control complications and emotion competition consequent for some other change gender stability even in access to her world will become better become hard and then about other people to become self with the promise security interested control like your things what resources this crisis of capitalism to our community world facing the crisis and could you go to conference was what order reminiscent of a situation that what are the planned sanctions the extension of which they were that ideologically and legally sustains capital the alternatives democratic socialism refusing collective bargaining to promote alternative econ regimes at very purpose review regimes of incarnation of the union that unionization capital system and democratic social capital post capital econ macro view which are about the institutions that control work with the restricted not specified on blueprint but shape out participants the ideological effects and political business process developing is ways over the process reach by the nuclear ever protect the organization with the creature of ideology reforms the same continue to capitalist institution to shrink the people collective bargaining and center situations and ways of very ultimate non-capitalist work control that are some way to save the capital but we are seeing some way to here about the division of citizens of one of the others collective bargaining feels to the names marks to shift from control the names marks to capital to the labor marks to capital workers with quality power capitalism new trust the master keys reconstruct law corporation marks social independent institution even if the enterprise system with cooperative control. Next up is the trade-off the board is stepping back from enforcement not to conserve limited resources capacities on already boiled and all to be back. And what because consider why she rather than to account with the office moving away from government more likely to consider other reasons the resources stretch out expensive when the interpretations the affordable steps resources haste and all to run it never been trusting in running issues of employer contractor status the extended issue except the work relation union access to productivity was of new norms increased cases of administrative additional resources which is drivers of resources of course with the resources was there and to reasons that matters having courts including the scope of bargaining the NRB is key to whistleblower protection running 35 whistleblower reports illegal and ethical and unlawful activities could far government state about the discounting of support to refer from the NRB maintain public records and and exposure retaliation by for engaging in constructive negative whistleblowing prevents warming temperatures that provide institutional pressure to water reports when encouraged with request access leadership and institutional protocol to hire as well as whistleblowing of mistakes of all by issues they cross citizens to make an ability to make informed decision by bypassing gatekeepers to become last time the defense with whistleblowers exposure of the institution blind spots of the vaccine to go straight and exposure for forward indications very serious in the cameras the goal one responsible for which can be catastrophic losses in the countries of combat is the word who scientific will whistle services society scott just warming causing extinction of degradation we have to do 5% celebration goal 10 rows and reversal of flooding heat wave we have no loss of positive vaccine method reason we have results on self prevention and change every spot we have degrees Celsius to bring about extinction next off is the antitrust counterpoint the United States federal government should through its antitrust enforcement agencies withhold approval for mergers and acquisitions that increase employer power and decrease labor power engagement power body consultation with labor unions regarding to review of mergers and acquisitions the counterpoint is the policy this counterpoint is the policy the one you see actually advocates for when you see and bits of house on unions also need to pursue unions as expert market participants with an sort of knowledge experience offer engaging to review while introducing to informally consider workers new merger reviews unions estimate engagement formal workers to be informed by having 80% of market condition workers of the course of the one zero representing which social rigid they should be brought into the merger process and give decision rules to unions that necessity strong substance engage merger topic work safety and need for agency to report benefits to consumers as offsetting harm stories next off is vagueness the affordable specify which they should extend how they don't to the unions have collectively organized for to understanding which reserve and how they're protected the plan doesn't spec vote negative one clash to make plans instead of expecting have one to offensive communities with breaking shell and then negational clash that wastes key operations and benefiting the activity to salty could there mean to agree that they learning from the collective be to the point of use this and because these concepts are relatively hard investors and things are question about the need to give the breather and there's been a work on fuzziness with the original employers to negation workers run out of money and go back to rebellion is next up is the states counterpoint the 50 states well with some national entities should substantially strengthen the mandatory subject of collective bargaining rights workers of the merger review, see liberal assaults on which we have to copy. We need to prove that evidence of the clause to see also for the next one, NRB, so constitutional attack. On certain public states, states have worked with the relations of the constitution rights, where subsector attack to the report. Interpretation officers that start with the function of the review, where they revampation states will be the arena of labor, using other species involving novel politicians. Next off is politics, the aim for every vehicle Pascal, not guaranteed. NRB 1113, AMB, we teach the professionals about every should be together full of teachers. We use a to word final message coalition. More than to ensure that the bill remains on the agenda. The plan acts about the docket. Hyphen 19. List of the parts of the worst and every single time that was limited every day. When one bill is down to the organization, there's down these coverage will become greater with the deadlines. Extinction, Smith 21. Synthesis, intention, focus, and future manufacturing, human practice, coalition, culture, situation, will be enabled to compliment image. The increase from a frequency of vibration, the first causes to wave or first predicted wave. The average radio station broadcast signal, signals on signal AM frequency, non-absent. Econ decline doesn't cause World War 20. Not even destroying conditions if war conditions will cause there would be more than 40% natural wars, but some of the econ second. No matter econ conditions is lower than world as they include cheaply being reasonable as 30 minutes as CPD not in. The question is the only factor many really less significantly much. It is not likely to affect war, especially in the short term, or it's resilient. Inserted when you see branch reference that says that the dollar is so resilient and people fund the United States no slow growth impact families. Something that the facilities dependent on the power cost. US and South Europe is the government's new relationship progression activity. You can go first at hard power solely on the market invention living. And overseas women effective in Germany failed to remain 90s. The other 25% of the world are doing more peaceful than the exists within the reserves. Motion GDP's US share of consequences of one photo machine method in case the destroying through those complex levels of all irrespective of your grand path, the only evidence of working as far as to be tested for. Remember the world agrees we can with operating with the police, those who take the rest of the little of sport. Inequality is declining, not accidental water jump to the back. There's been 40% of the rest of the balance sheet, top versus size of people. That is equal to the abscess market pursuing in the middle class. And inequality for 5 months before she is exit reports on checking most of its inequality actually part of the next group. America's taxation and public spending. After this committee represented on our housing research balance sheet for US for show approval, with working capital amounts to financial organization and wealth countries involved in equality diversity by goal, equalization for what mass as should be doing low income records studies fund within a few years half on entire government welfare and progressing US media house so far. Better than Rodney says, no civil war, 1125. Options begin civil war welfare, do we move equality to recon clearly divided more divided than we have in 1860s and 1900s. So let's know this is most of the bonds races here, what division 2 elections losers by 3, by loser 3, and assassination, future predictions of civil war. Within CDC violence says exception, advantage 2. No AI concentration out in market demand. Capital and provision country market and issue of countries. The interest concerns with COVID repeatedly country practices and is until high face house open source data centrality. Lower cost of capital costs not to do barrier to entry. The digital conference in the world of conversion network effects. Usually should by AI make this number of users take reduce need for data. These notes AI reduce entry value data decreases. Not enough to outweigh competitors. Surveillance 1, none of it rises to the next threat. There's no snare fixation encrypt 2, tons of all causes that they can solve for, like creating new life forms. That's one secret into the reference. 3 other countries do no modeling, no digital authoritarianism. So we have to know most of the these kind of verbal studies of democracy and federal rates of little kids in region present history. Other countries the kind of predictions that other things enough that allows us to work we predict the record. And more city but they should fight sugar but do not never students do compromise the policy image. Make more decisions in studies canceling out online costs or damage is already done. Insert one see value for reference, no cyber. Lying we do the next world will cyber depictions it was the simulations of signal analysis and data on the below. I mean cyber costs escalation 100 of incidents of and triggered escalation no predict major sometimes to stop responsible will be used on the developing actions and no other restriction. Something developing people of the conflict average powers over to the observed power with no disease or educated pandemics third. There should be other knowledge and consequences or estimates educated pandemics 1 and 3. These are high numbers needed to be supported reported by good deal of terrible harming and you need to reach out and emotional role as the bridge. Antarctic station ships new submarines and doomsday covers and Herbert said encounter tribes astronauts who device that people up to all uninfected. That comes through the gold purchasing device 100 believe you device and representing infectious we do a first purchasing device that happens in lethal. We need to preserve the investment of choose we need to evade public health measures we need to economize these themselves to why we humanity of the vaccine and device will crazy enough to deploy this.
Are you good?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll start now. Status of everything.
Tax was always a logical option.
Okay. I want to talk about the politics DA. The link, is it just about like
It's floor time.
taking time? It's floor time?
Yeah, it's floor time.
Okay. Why doesn't things like Epstein thumb?
I mean, our evidence prices that in, and it still says that
Does it?
it continues to build. I mean,
Where'd
yeah.
your F say Epstein?
Well, our evidence is from 1113, so that obviously prices in Epstein.
Fair enough. I guess the impact card, Smith 21. Can you explain why putting AM radios in cars?
This is question.
So our Smith evidence is fantastic. It says that synthesizing the intention and flow of AM radio is key to stopping an extinction level threat. We are a car-based economy. Everyone needs information from
I don't
AM
have a
radio.
car, am I gonna die?
Well, the reason why is because you have AM radio now. The cars are phasing
I don't have
out.
AM radio, I'm broke.
Well, no. The cars used to have AM radio, but they're phasing it out now. But the act would make sure everyone has it. FM radio fails though because it's low frequency, and so people cannot get it to their cars in time, and the bandwidth is bad. AM radio has
The
major
judge
bandwidth.
is literally laughing at this, so I'm gonna move to T. What are topical
Wait, this is
laughs
100.
under your intern?
What are topical affirmatives?
Yeah.
Well, our argument is just that anything that ensures collective bargaining rights, that do things over wages, hours, and
Examples, please.
examples of affirmatives.
Yes.
Federal
Fed
workers.
workers, sectoral bargaining would probably, because that has to do with wages, hours, conditions.
Because it would be under the NLRB, so they would only be able to bargain over those things under a sectoral regime.
What else? I mean, I'm a 2A, so I don't think about apps like that.
Fair enough. My next question is about the NLRB DA. I'm a little bit confused about this connection with the internal link. Your Rudnick evidence talks about how whistleblowers who report labor law violations to the NLRB can talk to them. Your Kamagasa evidence seems to be about scientists who report about climate change. What is the connection between these two things?
They're both talking about the same thing. So Rudnick is in the context of when the NLRB protects employees in the abstract from engaging in things like whistleblowing, and then it says that that protection is important because it allows, because in the context of climate, it's essential for people to report
Think about all the scientists at Exxon and all these large companies who are seeing horrible climate disasters and are unable to report on them because they're scared of crackdown.
Right, but your card isn't about, your Rudnick card is not about that. It says, quote, a whistleblower who is terminated for reporting labor law violations. What card do you think
so
you have?
our argument is that people are scared to whistleblow because they'll get fired or cracked down on. The MLRB is working to ensure that those protections exist for the people that want to do.
But it's
so.
just about labor law violations.
Well, yes, because these people are scientists that work, so it's
Well, the
inherent.
violation is in itself because they've been cracked down on.
Yeah,
right?
it's
That's what it's
a
saying.
labor thing.
Okay, I understand.
Yes.
monopsony advantage, industry advantage, TCVR, vagueness, the cap K, the merger review counterplan, the state's counterplan, the NLRB oversight disadvantage, and then the AM radio disadvantage.
Can I get that one more time?
Monopsonies, industry, TCVR, or T-strength, vagueness, the capitalism critique, the merger review counterplan, the state's counterplan, the NLRB oversight disadvantage, and then the AM radio.
Okay. Give me 1 sec. I need to open this up. Figure out what the AM radio DA answers are. Data cards.
I spent all night prepping that set. Just
Yeah, cards.
That's the A strat. Alright, I'm good to go.
I'm also ready.
Yes, slow growth causes extinction, political unrest, first diversionary war, and econ crash, which makes the U.S. aggressive yet vulnerable, which collapses alliances and invites first strike. That's Young and Brands. Wall concludes war is possible. Wall 20, to be sure, never let about our cause of war stupidity, especially when there's so much evidence, there's no guarantee we won't see this kind of leader something instability, and it doesn't assume rising secular stagnation, which is our scenario. And Brands saying it's resilient doesn't take out the F because secular stagnation erodes those forms of resilience that Brands talks about. And Fetweiss is too old to assume the current state of the economy and the geopolitical climate, which incentivizes revisionist conflict. And inequality low is unresponsive. Regressions prove wage inequality is high from employer collusion-driven concentration. That's a feast. That's the only metric we've drawn an internal from. So broader economic social inequality doesn't implicate monopsony power. And yes, civil war causes extinction. Internal unrest versus perception of weakness from adversaries who first strike and incentivizes regional growth from decline that stares, even if not independently existential. It causes nuclear use in every theater, which their evidence doesn't speak to, and it doesn't talk about the rising inequality from secular stagnation. Industry advantage. Yes, AI market concentration, their evidence does not assume rising investments in high killer acquisitions. That's Shirley and Fraser. Their evidence only speaks to data not being a barrier for entry, which is not our argument. And they drop that AI market concentration causes extinction. Labor monopsony collapses interconnected systems and cloud infrastructure and model collapse, which spurs existential emerging tech like deepfake grids and UAVs. That's Lynn. Yes, there's a pandemics, in fact, disease spurs biosecurity crises and zoonosis risk, and mutated lethality flips negative peers, which cause extinction, absolutely revitalize healthcare. That's Millet and Redfield. Their evidence does not assume a collapsed hospital system, which is our scenario for an impact. Yes, cyber attacks cause extinction. Cyber vulnerabilities incite user losing pressures that spur first strike and miscalculated war from espionage. That's Acton. Their defense just says that it doesn't happen, but it doesn't assume the user losing pressures. Yes, bioterror causes extinction. Globalization ensures genetic engineering, CRISPR, and synthetic biowarfare spill over and mutate beyond constraints. That's Yvonne T. 1, we meet atextually is the least arbitrary standard. B, functionally, mandatory bargaining rights for private sector workers exist. The plan expands its scope and mandatory subjects. 2, counter-interpretation. Strengthening means improving collective bargaining resources, skills, and organization structures. D, speculative 25. Touching collective bargaining evidence represents a wide range of contexts, strengthening capacity, trade unions, improving the resources, skills, and organizational structures. 3, prefer and perform position. Recite the international concession of labor rights that outweighs because it's the only predictable way to understand the resolution. And functional limits. Unions, bad bargaining, bad econ, states, process, cap, check all their offense. 3 is reasonability. Default 2 into a void substance credit. Vagueness. 1, no violation. The plan is not vague. It alters bargaining topics with detailed enforcement specs. That's Posner. 2, counter-interpretation. Specify nothing less than the resolution. Anything else is infinitely aggressive, which kills fairness in a vague plan. Green lights negative ground by linking more. 3, CX generics and solve the advocates check their impact. 4, default the reasonability. It's key to avoid substance credit out. 5, yes, we get enforcement. It's normal means fiat capca. 1, framework. It explains the purpose implications against a competitive alternative. Anything else is self-serving. Fairness is the only impact, and inferior clash makes critical research useless. 2, perm do both. Worker control fails without the plan. Graham, 23. Workers control the impossible means of production. Socialize the office of good proceedings control production. Safe power. The democratic means system of capitalism. Complicated economy. Workers council alone. Unions gaining power means institutions at a national level. Capitalism. The states president to control what else can be used better with the dominant classes in power. And those workers do not support radical demands. 3, permanently up the alternate other instances. 4, no link. Maximize the benefits of the proletariat. The opposite of justifying school market interaction. 5, capitalism is good in every warrant is a GA to the all. 1, economic power and interdependence. They buoy conflict by revision adversaries, that's Brands, and absolute decoupling. Markets facilitate absolute all disruption, low arch to the all 22. Cutting emissions boils down to degrowth or decoupling. Either our proposals on uncertainty is green growth, temporary is proven our alarming sort of from to air like tech will be needed to reduce emissions. Power societies work for less efficient tech offsetting savings incentive schemes achieved. Absolute decoupling, even accounting emissions, right investment will be needed. It is difficult to see economies over time small can generate alongside educational third adaptation. The private sector will have to mobilize and finding financial stability already sounds like a way to make that happen. And model collapse, optimizing the divisional labor threats, opening and NVIDIA from condensing existential risk. That's Lynn, authoritarianism. The also doesn't abolish Chinese markets, so failure to compete fuels the spread of
Employers ceding the market to them causes crackdown on workers, which turns the all. That's Mancini. 6. Transitioning to essentially planned economies impossible and undesirable. Mold the 24. Examine planned economies because they're not many. The only examples of your budget, the results of disasters, not only 1/3. The additional protection of Vision Interpretation Act reduction majority barely subsists. Central planning was abysmal failure. The large problem is if your central planning faces massive data problem plans, you need to know what people want to sought after equilibrium is ever changing. Policy makers need to organize in ways that are feasible. New technology, catastrophe authors, availability, supply, and the alternative can't solve the AFF because it would probably abolish markets, which is specifically key to competition and innovation. And utopian fiat is a voter for mooting the AFF completely and killing education. Merger review counterclaim. 1. Perm do both. 2. Perm do the counterclaim. They must be by text and function. Anything else justifies penny less and work makes or skill to ground. 3. Collective bargaining rights are key. They don't enshrine them. 1. Market. CBRs prevent job switching and substitution that allows employers to automate labor competition. That's Mancini. 2 is worker voice. Only a legally enforceable right enables union involvement over merger. Otherwise, regulators ignore the concerns. That's Posner. That alone solves antitrust enforcement by overcoming the knowledge problem. That's Kalachi. And conditionality is bad. Terminally used to AC choice by justifying multiple contradictory positions, make rhetoric abusive negative strategies impossible. Key to fairness and class dispo solves their offense. 4. Oversight that the NLRB is key to solve and merger review. 1. Harm. Absent interagency review, states would fail to prevent economic spillover to consumers without trading off what the unions demand. That's Posner. And info sharing and expertise. Only the NLRB and DOL, which they do not use as actors, have statistical knowledge and expertise over industry-specific labor markets, unionization rates, law violations, expert announcements, etc. that solves mergers. That's Hafiz, the state's counterclaim. 1. Perm do both. Pure attention to the counterplan shields the link. 2. Perm do the counterplan. 3. Oversight deficit. The plans bargaining bars intermediation of the NLRB for info sharing and expertise over merger review. Otherwise, anti-concentration fails. That's Hafiz and Posner. 4. Reject non-federal fiat. Arbitrarily fiat to an infinite number of actors. Decide uniformly doesn't disprove the validity of such action causes infinite regression and dex fairness. 5. Gets struck down under Machinist preemption. Siaja 25. Machinist preemption emphasis of express textual support on existing localities, vernacular labor legislation concerning matters controlled by free play of economic processes. 8. Break reductions, restrictions on the use of the funds minimum healthcare benefits and government requires statutory modifications to the NLRA. 6. State merger review laws fail. Abbott 25. State merger requirements, harmful state merger cases, and reconciliation based on duplication of federal efforts and into the federal policy wise better adoption increase of only cost burdens on merger parties, better preservability. Cali, New York pre-merger legislation post major new causes incentivize beneficial mergers that significant economic harm and forces already cooperate state merger requirements reduce effectiveness. 7. Mergers between large interstate corporations get struck down under the Interstate Commerce Clause. 8. It links to the net benefit. 9. Non-Congress is key. Only a statutorily enforceable right enables union involvement over mergers. Otherwise, regulators and courts ignore their concern. That Posner that answers their federal government law bad claim. NLRB oversight dissent. 1. The DA is 0. The Rudnick evidence says that whistleblowers go to the NLRB for labor law violations, but their Kumagasa card is about climate whistleblowing. There's 0 internal link. 2. Whistleblowers might be canaries in the coal mine, but there's 0 reason why they will get companies to act or to stop fossil fuel emissions. 3. No link. We are more than just the NLRB. We also share through the Department of Labor, so there's no reason why it would stretch the resources too much, especially because there's no reason why they would overstretch themselves. And other countries stop emissions. There's no reason why the U.S. is key. China and India emitted just as much fuss. And no uniqueness. The NLRB lacks quorum. Durable fiat overcomes them, but they don't have a reason why they're effectively enforcing whistleblower protections now. And whistleblowing can't solve all warming, even if it exposes some fossil fuel companies. And no link. The AFF makes the NLRB more efficient through that info sharing process that was above. And even extreme warming is the next potential. Or 20. Even at extreme levels done by the next nature crops that less sensitivity would have food, even as sea levels was 100 meters. Most land remain past cases of high temps. Don't see a loss of biodiversity 12 degrees of the EOC, not PETM. There's little evidence for probably extinction due to warming. Most important is heat stress, however, substantial reasons remain below even 20 degrees Celsius. Warming when equals areas in elevated region remains simply continue exit. The choice of climate appears very small. The radio descent. 1. Controversy set the docket. Google 1110. House return to lunches. The controversies ending shut down the Lisa Johnson's problems. Homes lawmakers reopen Johnson without taking long seeming controversies. Grishalva decisive on Epstein false contentious bill that would ban trading individual stocks. Lawmakers forced to catch up on mysterious brewing public and Obamacare. There would be a deliberate process. 2. No link. The United States federal government should do the plan and pass the AM radio for every vehicle act. Disadvantages must be intrinsic to the plan. That's real world. Key to reciprocal preference and facilities better clash because it's what a logical policymaker would do. 3. Turn. The plan is bipartisan and merger review endures Trump. Poster 25. Trump's anti-trust leaders maintain Biden's enforcement priorities and expecting to just make criticisms to make islands left as agenda mergers or only suspect Congress adopted hostility current obvious reaction knows much of the rise of corporate power under enforcement of just possibly responsible. Leaves the question for why 2 items with such a reward we would agree. We can put to rest ideological partisan explanation ideologies on both sides express worries about corporate power. 4. No trade-off. Lawmakers can compartmentalize. Program 18. Even though lawmakers are going to accomplish it after 60 days disagreement about partisan dissension as even is as senators. 5. Lawmakers support power each bipartisan reports decision politics and since lawmakers compartmentalize disputes. 5. It doesn't get knocked off in the docket. There's no warrants in their uniqueness evidence that says that happens. 6. No link. Fiat would mean the atoms put at the bottom of the docket, leaving room for the act. 7. No impact. There's no internal link that says that act is specifically key, which means that other frequencies can't solve, and their impact, the site for their impact card has no author clause, which means that you should be suspect of it because you have no idea who this person is.
Did you read this already for the antitrust counterclaim?
Oh yeah, go back to the merger review counterclaim.
Collusion. Antitrust worsens it. Absent labor reforms. Ehrlich in turns 25. Apply application of statutory labor exemptions. Potential compromise may be problematic for labor entitling by allowing unionization without entitling these workers of full rate of mandatory employment benefits. The production dramatically decreasing the leverage, allowing unionization of bargaining without the protection oversight labor laws. Agents open the door to employers working both sides of the bargaining table, defeating protection of collective bargaining.
It links to the net benefit. The link on politics is sad. It would definitely link to that because it is still passing merger review policy. And it would still link to the oversight to SAD because it would still require the NLRB to oversee union activity.
I'm sending that other card out now.
Yeah, wait a minute.
Who was that?
Let me open this up real quick.
Okay. Good to go.
Reasons or everything.
Conditionality, states, and utopia are just reasons to check the argument.
Right, and Utopia PO was on the K.
Yes.
Bioterror on case, what's the scenario? Who creates an engineered pandemic?
Our Yvonne evidence and our Redfield evidence speak to terrorist organizations.
Which terrorist organization?
I don't think we have to specify
Well,
which.
you kind of do because all of them are like dead right now.
Well, I mean,
All
I don't
terrorist
think all terrorist organizations
dead.
are dead. That's
they're
like
like-
wild. You haven't read a piece of evidence that says that, but we think that like it's a linear impact that like especially magnified.
Okay, so to be clear, so like what is the process of like how do you create an engineered pandemic? Like how can like lone wolf terrorists or like rogue actors or organizations create the conditions of a pandemic?
I mean, I think it would be worrying if I knew how to make a bio.
Yeah, we're on camera right now.
Well, you need to know your internal link, like what?
Well, I mean, like I think I can know that like terrorists could possibly like hire scientists, or they could like break into labs to steal a biological weapon, and like a lack of like
They
proper
can break
healthcare.
into labs and steal it. Okay, so like which labs are creating biological weapons that can kill humanity?
I'm not sure what specific labs.
Like,
but,
'cause they're not,
there's-
like, this is like ludicrous, like, it's like, okay, vagueness, I have one, no violation, two, counter vague plans are better for ground, and then I missed like the next argument.
CX generics and salty additives check any impact.
Thank you. Yeah, CapK, transition wars between who? You said transition wars, right? I appreciate it.
I don't know if I read a card on that, but I guess like we would probably make that argument about like the brand's evidence that collapsing growth and like moving to a centrally planned economy would incite revisionist conflicts
Okay,
from
sure,
adversaries.
now let's talk about case, what is secular stagnation?
So that is when wages and labor like share, like employment and wages are both low, which makes the economy stagnate. And
So like the brands we highlight in the 1 and C, your answer to it was that secular stagnation erodes it. Your brand's evidence says that the dollar is remarkably durable because like the share of GDP is the same. Foreign investors support dominance and they finance large US deficits. How does secular stagnation erode the fact that foreign investors finance deficits?
yeah, because it's not a dollar hegemony impact or about like
But it,
the
but it
ways that
is-
like foreign investors, it's about like rising inequality
Well,
in
but
the
your
United
brand's
States,
evidence
like
is
the
like that
inability to
we
grow.
need the quote financial wherewithal to sustain global power. I'm confused why secular stagnation domestically doesn't mean that foreign investors can support the dollar.
Because, I'm sorry, I'm a little confused
It's
by
all
this because like I don't understand,
I was wrong.
like we have an internal.
There's like 5 seconds.
Alright, 10 minutes.
There were no add-ons, right?
No.
605. It's sent. The order is going to be the NLRB overstretched yet, the mergers kind of one, and then advantage 1, advantage 2. Let me know if y'all can give me a second here. I'm good. Western Kentucky. Yep. Okay. The DAL weighs complicates against forming and controlling impact ensures every action that means and destroys the economy and kills societal resilience. That's the one to see over hard evidence that whistleblowers are crucial to enable the success of ESG initiative to pretty remote something business and the ACG and negotiated by having every the compromise after the breaking the right. If it was a living products effective over governance and resign for other accounts, companies' business responsibility, sustainability, ESG solves numerous excesses, rich Chen and all 24 issues related to sustainability, include climate change, wealth inequality, geopolitical conflicts, and public health effects, humanity, survival importance, ESG metrics, incorporating externalities, encourage companies to provide sustainable development to contribute to the green economy and carbon neutrality issues, breakthroughs through innovation. Now they say the NLRB is not key with whistleblower protections. Wrong. They are, because they protect literally every single employer from being retaliated against, and the disclosure of the issues is protected, quote, concerted activity under the NLRA, which is the Rudnick evidence. Now, overwhelming evidence from across the regions proves the NLRB actively fights for whistleblower protection and is uniquely key to enforcement of the law. 21 employers of the safety of the United States, the whistleblowing good three, Trump waiting to the NLRB can read from the enforcement of the prohibitions of speaking out lawful temperatures. How great the precedents and resistance to the parties right over the NLRA, Los Angeles, labor rights, the racial engagement, and concerted activity, the NLRB is exclusive to resolve the section 7 claims in place. Recourse to the complaint for the board, and the board is taking the experience of view of the board of constitution of the NLRA. Prescription against the categories to speak up the federal whistleblower protection and unique for the NLRA as it protects speech directed to the public audience, protecting the NLRA deferred and in place for prescribing their employees from discussing work employees company academy in place of individual career policies. Other examples include petroleum company, hotel regulation, manufacturer director to the board routinely finds policy to overboard and therefore in the discussing workplace concerns their stepping up enforcement. Now the Ross 20 the NLRB will expand presentation and effectively protecting workers association of the association from further the NLRB advice and the agency signals window to investigate practices this line for the recent interagency collaboration with the NLRB FFSA begins to refer and whistleblower complaints to NLRB would greatly increase cases of whistleblower complaints and now surgery the enforcement of the NLRA lawyers should start becoming familiar with the NLRA. Now the card above says that it specifically protects people in petroleum and oil companies, which proves that whistleblower protections are uniquely key for warming. Now the link is huge. The NLRB has carefully calibrated their priorities. Now the plan immediately requires them to enforce a new policy out of nowhere, which destroys their agenda, broadening their mandate to include literally all of mergers, enormously increases their caseload and drains their founding resources, which are zero sum. They trade off between different items. That's what I see boil and haste. NLRB is tiny resource constrained agency labor policy costs overstretch haste. And also one of the related version of the agency referred to the board is still equipped to the deal of traditional agency accountability. Of course, it's able to NLRB is the entire LJ. She's only 200 a year without some of the NLRB, but I don't want me to the point that she's proposal of year 60. More cases would represent a 30% increase in the now, but the budget is smaller. The board continues to have all policies recklessly increase both costs and push the expanded revenues will unquestionably reduce the sum and rate in place and overstress the agency limit resources. It does not matter if they collaborate with the DL because that itself is labor the NLRB would have to do to info share, which magnifies the link and more. Now, Fiat cannot solve virtual machines. Fiat is the aspect to management plan passed by least minimal means. Fiat perfect uniform enforcement forever is a bad model. A education link cards through finite resources and balancing priorities is insanely in German consideration for labor-based arguments about real trade-offs are really important for learning about the world we live in. That outweighs education is the only portable skill we're living in. We debate with debate enforcement is key to labor education by 20 well. Creating systems was a labor debate institutional institutional limited policy based focus exclusiveness and standards either policy makers and calls of enforcement now B is that ground any other interpretation eliminates politics, states, circumvention, the topic-specific counterplans grounds, background is massive, the topic is already usually eliminating core generic choice fairness, which is intrinsic good. Now the internal link is pretty good. Our evidence says scientists are scared to whistleblow when they don't have protections because they'll be fired. This is scientists at companies like Exxon or oil or petroleum companies, which our evidence specifically speaks to, who are scared to come up against their own companies when they see massive amounts of pollution that goes out into different streams or across the world. So we see did not read a card for other countries, so you cannot buy it because it's just an assertion from Western Kentucky. But America is a key internal link because the companies that are doing warming abroad are American companies like Exxon or Chevron, etc. Because those are American-based companies which have whistleblowers abroad that the NLRB could possibly enforce against, which means that we are able to solve this. But none of this matters though, because they've not read a single card for why the internal link is false. But ours is quite good. The whistleblowing protections for those employees are good. Now they say our card is about labor protections. This is not true. It's about cracking down in that itself being a labor violation, and then the NLRB enforcing that. Now the impact defense is bad. Or just wrong time. 20 orderlies given the order uses a workable definition of the versus analysis. This is much of most recent science is not sufficiently considered impact score. Feelings of the entirety and have entirely different questions of likelihood of comment. Causing human extinction precise numerical figures are baseless. Its existential AFF authors systematically and NEG authors systematically underestimate the risk burden, and Kappa 24 claim is not a uniform process. It is diffuse that impacts activating risk activable and with food security, so it's not a lot of eruption of pathogens. These green global systems are the spiral definition of the exit of research source focus not on the impact of human even loss of the future will directly impact habitable or entirely different catastrophic climate changes that highly not to mention the 3C. The ones unrepresented relative to its likelihood and impact. Now cut it at impact. The merger review kind of how the conference holds the case and advocates for the policy that their 1ECs all the applicants want air neg. There is no 1EC card that advocates for the plan. Every app card is about changing the merger review process used by antitrust agencies. That is distinct from the plan, which says the union should directly bargain over where firms engage in M&A. If anything, the counterplan solves better than the plan requires workers to use labor power to block M&A despite a historically unfavorable policy environment for the unions. The counterplan is more solid because it just blocks those mergers directly use efficiently. The affirmative is shoehorned in the mechanism to appear more topical. Any of that deficit will even try to not protect it connected to a card that advocates for the plan. Now firm do both links to that benefit because it has the NLRB do the plan. It cannot shield because no matter what, it would have the NLRB do move into a full new category of focus, which is the link above. Perm to the counterplan is severance because it severs out of the mandate of doing collective bargaining rights, which they agree with because they said the counterplan does not do collective bargaining rights, which means you could immediately vote neg on topicality, which will be in part of the 1 NR. Now antitrust deficits are wrong. They're said the status quo, not the counterplan. The evidence says that current antitrust fails because it does not take worker interest into consideration. The counterplan takes 2 steps to solve. First, increase the scrutiny of employers, M&A that decreases labor power. The counterplan fiats the FTC and DOJ block all mergers. The absent are bad. Second, engages in consultative mechanisms with workers regarding the labor market impacts of M&A, which is basically the same as collective bargaining, which solves all of their bargaining keywords. Their evidence says the current antitrust fails because workers are consulted in the review process. The counterplan solves by engaging in binding consultation with unions. They've not read bargaining union with the 1EC half S. Evidence says that direct merger review is good and advocates for increased consultation with the FTC, DOJ, labor policy experts. 1EC half S 20 BSA and 1 structural resolution of the labor incorporating the NLB's regulators, the merger review process, national labor regulation, work over here, also anything of expertise, labor protection. Half this is also ancient. The FTC is only focused on labor enforcement property, and all 25 antitrust enforcement will continue enforcement of labor markets. FTC and labor task force to address the legal FTC issue, working to healthcare employees focus on labor market and resource agency requires enforcement with radically fewer resources, and they're specifically focused on anti-competitive labor mergers. Now the bullet and all 25 FTC and labor task force to investigate forward labor practices. If labor is going to be a top priority, FTC and labor significant focus, including prohibiting mergers. FTC focus on anti-competitive labor merger. The also answers collusion in bargaining key because it proves that antitrust right now is better. All of our cards are literally from a few months ago that says the FTC is only focused on labor now, which decreases the chance of collusion. Now conditionality is good. We get what we get in judge kick offense. 1 death the applicants. The first and last speech just lets the applicants look at the law first fairness. Second logic. The judge should be able to revert to the status quo. 3 assessing the review the applicant multiple angles, cluster better policy analysis. 4 ideological flex next only to an absent risk kind of conditionality purpose case and counterbalance defense. Diminishing utility. The counterbalance works for each one introduced. They can be with barely an 2EC time. Second is Q level. 2EC always has to answer 9 minutes arguments. More positions the worse they are. 3 don't impact the applicant. The levers 1EC to generate deficits for every counterbalance voter theory. No, actually, yeah, strike that. Now, the monopsony advantage. No econ crash brands says the dollar will always stay strong. Yes, it takes out the app because secular stagnation is based on the strength of the dollar abroad. Walt doesn't go neg. It's just a concession he makes, which is what academics do. Most research disproves causality. Federal and alternative reports are largely the business cycle considered the theory, which is considered short-term high possibility, historical records result in nationalism, BT among top economic objectives, mostly long run orthogonal to business cycle, only those who work in the short-term. Econ plays a key role now. Inequality data is coached in post-tax. Interests are also used to minus 25 control, and then that's a hammer story, destruction, zero kind of the errors, and destruction, or something variable out of my rights, and they come up with the concentration of the times you plus little bit more relief measures, existing policies, program to complete offset rest, and they come out concentration, rising in quality, severe knowledge, there's no awareness of growing evidence, interesting century severity of inequality in the U.S. Now, the Civil War is funny, but unlikely predictions from nature of U.S. history just moves zero is littered with political violence from presidential assassinations and other controversies of Lebanon. Now, they just asserted that domestically we'll get nukes, too many constraints that they won't get a hold of them. There are numerous constraints which are all above. Now, AI industries advantage AI lock and will not have a no emerging tech impact. Anderson and range 20 humans and tech losses lead to evolving systems benefit people regulation tech assets business product agency because market was meant to stay useful. Many experts have been humans always overcome hurdles, make adjustments through regulations. I have to meeting of normal people have many issues with control decisions if you didn't work out because it's raising questions. Now, then no cyber impacts simulations and if your state approves will tax under the threshold of conflict military cyber operations is separated by a fire rate diplomacy checks out a false alternative to escalation that's longer handed attribution, restraining capability check lose 20 Nazi actors in the state that lack capability to cause damage worse than the catastrophe. There's enough certainty valuability to read their unwilling to risk retaliation. No one else acts as cyber slaves to equate them to nukes opponents. Have no interest in catastrophic attacks to produce physical retaliation and for an escalation never occurred to the constraints limit arrest absence suggest control by advanced states. Yeah. Also, I think I'm worried I might have clipped a card, the Anderson win card. I think I ended it worked out. So just cut it there. There's like 3 long, like 1 sentence, or like a few words right before that.
Which card is it?
The Anderson Ray, no emerging tech impact. I missed like because raising question.
Oh,
No,
yeah, you're fine.
Yeah,
Thanks for letting us know, Chief.
Yeah. I'm good now. Okay.
I want to talk about, and I'll leave this at first, your, which one was it? Yeah, your second card, the LaRosse 23 evidence, says that OSHA has signed a memorandum of understanding with the NLRB that aims to deepen information sharing. How does this not take out, like, how does this not prove that info sharing solves?
Well, wait, I'm confused. Right now, they are able to do info sharing, but only like within their current scope of bargaining. The plan increases the scope to an entire new sector of all mergers and acquisitions. They literally like take on the job of an entire different agency. Like, obviously that would cause massive overstretch. You have lawyers, massive companies you're lobbying against, because like companies already do not like unions. They already sue and cause massive problems with the NLRB. It only gets worse when they go against the mergers and acquisitions.
I've got another question. I want to talk about like ESG. Like I'm just really confused as to the internal link of how whistleblowers get to like ESG and like solving climate change. Just like break it down for me.
Well, the ESG stuff is external to climate.
Okay, so that's just kind of like an add-on.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I guess like then for climate, like explain the internal link to climate then for me.
Yeah, so we've read really good evidence in the NLRB's key to whistleblowing protection. The Lamont evidence says that other examples include petroleum companies, manufacturers, directives, and other types of companies that have massive amounts of whistleblowing that is protected by the NLRB. These companies are explicitly key for warming. That was all the analysis in 2 and C above about how like companies like Exxon, Chevron, etc. export all of their climate change across the
So
country.
Lamont is from 2021. It's been 4 years. Why has whistleblowing like why have we not seen like any change in like emissions or like oil and gas?
We have. Emissions have been going down over time because what causes a tipping point is when we have massive amounts of emissions that go hidden over time because we do not have whistleblowers. We're willing to
read
speak out.
evidence that whistleblowers have reduced emissions.
That's the 1 and C card. They're like they are like explicitly key. I can pull up the name of it real quick, but and pull also lines. Like all of those lines were extended into 2 and C.
Kamuska card.
Yeah, the Kamuska card. It says institutions are pressured to water down reports when careers are threatened. A scientist's loyalty shift from institutional protocols to higher ethical duties. Whistleblowing is justified stakes are involved. By exposing truths, they empower citizens to demand accountability and make informed decisions over things like climate change.
Okay, so like
exposing vulnerabilities can avoid catastrophic losses.
Yeah, I guess so like with the
in the climate.
Like whistleblowing makes people care about the climate and call their senators to like pass a carbon tax.
No. No. Whistleblowing is key to stop companies from emitting massive amounts, because absent that, companies can just go behind.
I get it now. I just want to ask. You said
that.
something about like these companies are international. How does an international worker like whistleblow and protect my data?
Well, because there's American workers who oversee that, because the managerial people are the ones who are whistleblowing.
Okay.
me set up the
Yeah.
Okay. While everyone's waiting for the doc, or I'll get through an order. Advantage 2, the politics DA, the state's counter plan, the cap K, topicality, vagueness.
I'm gonna need that one more time, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it was long. The second advantage, the politics DA, the state's counter plan, the cap K, topicality, and then vagueness.
I'm assuming advantage 2 is just defense that Pocket
Yeah.
gets you.
Yeah. So, advantage 2, I'm so sorry. Advantage 2, politics, states, cap, T, vagueness.
The longer we take, the longer Brock has to stand there holding his laptop awkwardly. So keep asking questions.
Is everyone good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Pandemics shock as causation after been all public health measures necessary groups easy survival probably that source of human animal history proves source on get your connection with them solve from falling short of extreme existential extremely really unconscious to be an account how to practice the well social class people who are not even very secure fair to the course the everything we know about the house you know and over the system of situations people examples of the pandemics we come to the with the connection answers because we have a little water metal technical when it's see that exchange of available constitution of disease is an exchange of rapidness we talk about communities close to your next thing a disease
The one in C4
The one in C4
answers
said
by
evidence
terror,
answers
because
by
it says that
terror,
engineered
says that
pandemics
engineered
are not
pandemics
extinction,
are
dropped
not
by extinction.
extinction dropped by the states. Or no, sorry, politics.
Concede numbers and compartmentalization, no link concede, bottom of the docket means the plan, bottom of the docket means the plan never goes through because it's constantly stuck in passage or take years if you can't solve any of their short-term high rate impacts. States, when you concede the permutation, no cross applicability between flows theory. Was reason reject the argument not the team, it's justified by condo, no link, word, uniform counter interpretation, we get non-uniform, captain. When you concede the permutation, no link, alt is utopian, the AFF is utopian, reason reject the argument, not the team, T. Topical furnace made less strict existing collective bargaining rights, which are specifically and nearly limited in scope. The only subject matter unions have is the right to bargain over wages, hours, and conditions of employment. That's McKinnon and Hardway. The plan violates increases the entirely new collective bargaining right out of the whole cloth because the subject matter of the plan is outside the wages, hours, and working conditions framework or often outweighs well limits. Making the topic about pre-existing rights creates a manageable neg research burden. It means the plan must affect a numerically limited number of rights that already exist in the not plentiful literature therein. Legitimizes adding any aspect of firm governance from ESG to automation to offshoring as a mandatory subject of collective bargaining negotiations. Is it possible to create a non-arbitrary limit once the topic departs from currently recognized rights? 2 limits outweigh a neg prep. It depends on the manageable caseload. We can reasonably predict in advance and not place a prep to stretch grants because the apps are artificially more likely to win based on the next inability to adequately prepare for the being spread too thin. B, education lack of limits across class, which is the only leading benefit of debate. 3 is ground apps under their unpredictable and sector specific effects. That complicates core neg objections like politics and the economy. 2 1A project plan text in a vacuum. 1 it begs the question if the plan's actual mandates don't constitute directly collective bargaining rights. It doesn't matter that they put it in the plan. The meaning of the plan can only be determined holistically. Words don't have meaning in isolation, only in context. Pure text in a vacuum is sophistry. 2 counter-interpretation. Evaluate solvency of cross text is definitive interpretation plans functionally. That's just because it prevents the AF from having it both ways. 3 more hazard if we win our interpret vote AF. Because you put resolution words in the plan just as the AF for anything forces the neg to give 2 numbers and key and substance to get to square 1, which is untenable. The 2AC1B, they don't be functionally 1. The plan since the new subject matter is not about wages, working hours, or the terms and conditions of employment. It grants new substantive collective bargaining rights for merger review, which is clearly distinct from strengthening existing rights. 2 subject matter that doesn't substantially to wages, hours, and conditions of employment is by definition outside the scope of collective bargaining. 19. Court structure of the matters cannot be subject to bargaining. The similar expanding similar scope of subject needs to be bargaining because they are outside the negotiable terms policies of not to substantially rate wages, hours, conditions of employment is a major function. 3. Workers explicitly lack the right to bargain over permissive subjects. There's no ambiguity in the plan in this topic the exploit verse 24. The party bargaining with trigger unique advantage of integration algorithm is not required for the employer reach agreement yet employer must engage in the bargaining right to provide. The party bargaining does not attach all matters to work related to the house of each of the properties union. No forms to get engaged around or defines mandatory wages, hours, terms and conditions of employment, mandatory topics. Our plan to working environment correlate to bargaining employer cannot change mandatory topics due to bargaining. It does not have to be permissive. Bargaining topics for anything outside the terms and conditions of employment is consultation, which is a from collective bargaining. Device. 7 6 bargaining response to which employer negotiators and conditions of employment consultation to process employers suggest changes to employers' policy and determined by the employer. The counter-interpretation it links to all of our offense. 1 limits. Said Antoine 87. If topic mandatory for party made demanding period, it matters outside the state or channel circle. The permissive board order have not cause a matter of mandatory even concerning not mandatory bargaining. Mandatory for company puts in argument for all of the duration of mandatory permissive decision and topic mature. Negotiation negotiation, anything else, subject to duty, and therefore run a party, and then we need to demand bargaining over a basic business entry, and also to determine whether what's the Kagan, a limited term of the terms and conditions of employment is key to prevent affirmatives from affecting any chosen aspect of the status quo. However, it was also reading the terms and conditions of employment disputed in any terms of the contract. No one excludes status quo. This we have to assume about those team covers employees' desire to get the condition worker under control. We have a decision having this and expresses liberal open-endedness. Therefore, terms and conditions of employment is to be limited. Phase 2 is ground. No interpretation is used to make away from core negative offense. A is adding a new subject matter to collective bargaining rights. It's goes to core protection by boosting labor power relative to employers in terms of wages and working conditions. This has inflation and discount. Presumes that the plan strengthens labor in the core existing areas of intention and management. Their interpretation uncritically shifts the debate to any aspect of firm governance like sustainability, offshoring, immigrant labor, etc. With the affirmative cannot allow us to have and strategically deny core ground. B is linking this. Unions already have the option to raise any purpose if they want negotiations. They just don't have a right to bargain over it. Their interpolacy to lock in the status quo by giving rights to these unions are already attempting to negotiate more. 12. Some conditions to make sure purposes of the term by case by case, which is ours to become duty more. Less than managers who include background checks, discipline policies, certain regarding church based relocation strengthened. Means to develop something that already exists. Morris 19 noted. Number 2, rather than create innovation and issues on the website which are begun rather than build something new where there's created scout bargaining rights are defined by the NRA. They're already broad. Brooks 20. The only other rates bargaining rights and bargaining negotiate, which also says about the scope of language, because it occurs in conditions of employment. Predictability. Our interpretation of those predictable and precise one existing rates. While it can be more predictable than requiring the application of the framework of collective bargaining rights in existence since the 1930s too. The current construction of mandatory bargaining subjects is overwhelmingly predictable, backed up by negative legislative court and be president English 24. Should conform with the distinction of mandatory percent. The Congress did broad definition of the subject required bargaining of the more flexible wages hours and negative conditions of language referring to the span to be over the court. And no critical contracts are subject to mandatory common hours. And this group subject to be permissive and arbitrary injury union affairs court under the meaning idea only through days of our work. And the rule also to were in mandatory permissive predictable and mandatory permissive and forward. Their counterpation is one about Europe, so it's unpredictable and 2 has 0 to define because it says strengthening of resources and skills. It's an example of an action, but there's no intent to define what that action is. Inserted for reference. Functional material 1, good for 1 apps, which already happens to be fact checked and generic. So group 2, this topic has no universal strategies and they kill the ones that exist by logical political fights and codified the scroll 3 that can check. Single articles exist for anything, teams manufacture advantages and don't have to be big. The NEG has no ground. This is further proven by the employment law and state that each chemical loses to preemption or uniform theory. Rights key is necessary when everyone these days goes for competition. Capital loses for economy uses shot politics is visible. REAMDA. Reasonability requires an adequate workable interpretation. All our offense truths there is any company interprets better because it would cause racist top. And there's best and those who are research debates in fast because this rejected requires judging intervention.
Okay, we have 8:20. We'll start that. 06. It's gonna take a second. But you have the second monitor, right?
I'm not using it right now, but yeah.
I was like, this is always so precarious.
Yeah.
Oh, that looks so sketchy.
I don't like to do second monitor like on the stand. I've tried it once and it was like kind of a mess.
I've seen so many videos of people where it falls down.
I used my iPad once to create CETA, and I did that, and I like felt just so scared the whole time. So
Yeah, it's honestly a pretty scary thing. Yeah. Okay, everyone good for order?
yes.
Okay. It'll be monopsony's advantage, industry's advantage, T, the AM radio DA, antitrust, trade-off. Third.
Yes, slow growth, impact, economic vulnerability, and alliance collapse incites adversarial first strike are strong evidence as it causes adversaries to do conflict initiation, which none of their 2NC evidence assumes because they only answer the brand's evidence. Also, foreign investment can't solve domestic instability, which answers the only warrant for why it wouldn't cause war. We'll concede there's no inequality uniqueness, which takes out the only other thing on the ESG add-on, the industry's advantage. Yes, AI markets impact. 1, labor monopsony over AI causes vast systemic risks through collapsing commercial and info systems. 2, corporate consolidation over cloud infra destroys international industry and globalized systems. 3, model collapse over emerging tech like deepfake programs, grid modernization, UAVs, etc. all cause extinction. Their evidence doesn't assume any of these internal links because it's just about generic emerging technology, but doesn't assume market concentration, which means it isn't actually an answer. Yes, disease impact. First, onset pandemic spur biosecurity crisis that monopolizes on existing welfare bioterror attacks, but second is that zoonosis risks and mutated lethality flip neg empirics. Their history card can't assume interconnections, and their other defense doesn't assume the complete collapse of the hospital system, which is our 1AC internal link and a 2AC piece of defense that they didn't answer. T. Extend our interpretation. Strengthening collective bargaining rights means to improve the collective bargaining resources, skills, and organization structures. That's the spillergare. Precision outweighs only establishing the most legal definition can direction what is perceived as the resolution, which guides predictable research. It turns their offense. Limited topics aren't unique. If the app has no idea on what to do to be topical and it worsens clash within those limits, only our interp is in the context of strengthening collective bargaining rights, which outweighs limits only matter if we know what the topic is. NEG definitions are inconsistent and invalid. Curvila 10. In the CBA process is difficult to capture and to developer problematic. Understanding quantitative, say a little about person, focus a little on whether rights are actually answered based on information available. If that info is actually relevant, any assessment and CB requires understanding variety and educator CB. Given the CB refined to generalize is crucial measure realistically, and narrow constructions of strength are arbitrary and pointless marks at all 3. However, market strength should be interpreted change in ordinance. We see no superior for an error interpretation strength in order to be seen construction that ordinary medium being stronger. And the first argument was the predictability block. This doesn't apply. Argument isn't about predictability but precision, which is distinct for the reasons I've explained above. Their cards in the 2 and the 1 are also defined collective bargaining, not what it means to strengthen collective bargaining rights, which means they aren't precise in the terms of using the whole resolution. Their indict of our card obviously has an intent to define. It says strengthening collective bargaining rights includes, and then says our interpretation, and it being from Europe doesn't matter because it's a precise legal definition. Okay, their limits offense is solved by function. Their limits in ground offense is solved by functional limits. They drop multiple examples. First is that bargaining bad. Every app has to increase it, which means that it obviously still applies to everything. Second is econ DAs. Next can contest long-term fiscal planning or punish shitty internal links through shocks. The state's counterplans also either most apps there's no quorum, which means squirrely apps lack stable preemption arguments, and process counterplans and the CAPK also provide a functional limit. These aren't the terminal end, but rather the starting off point for debatability. Refined over the course of a season, functional limits answers most of the reasons why limits is bad, but the link uniqueness argument is still neg. They can say that bringing stuff to impasse is bad, which apps have to do under models. So you could say that bringing merger review to impasse is bad because it shuts down the economy, which would give you a great link to an econ DA. They say bargaining rights are already already broad. This takes out their limits offense, but we didn't go for an AFF ground argument, so it's completely irrelevant to our offense. Lastly, reasonability. They blitzed through this in the last 10 seconds of the speech, which means that you should hear heavily affirmative, but you should default to it. It's not intervention, but impact framing. They need to prove that their standards outweigh the substance crowd caused by them going for team voting on marginally more limited interims creates an incentive for the NEG to shift to resolutional threshold just beyond the F, which link turns are offense wanting or time constraints incentivize myopic limit CAs, which means debates stale and skewed negative. Anything else? Cool. AM radio. Bottom of the docket is stupid. We don't have short-term time frame impacts. They didn't isolate any, so the 2NR doesn't get to do so, and durable fiat means that it goes through relatively expediently. Antitrust. Starting with the re-highlightings that they gave, the first Hafiz piece of evidence that they said says that the NLRB should be included, which is our argument, and their competition argument, so I'm not sure what they're talking about. They say Hafiz is ancient, but the FTC fails. They dropped our 1AC warrant, which is that they don't actually enforce merger review against companies that have high labor market concentration. Our evidence is explicit that the FTC or DOJ has never brought one of these to impasse. Fiat doesn't solve because they still have to win those cases, and the FTC and DOJ doesn't have the knowledge to do so, which will be our deficit below. They say they're focused on Kroger Albertsons. Okay, this is what our 1AC evidence is talking about, and it says that it failed, which is the whole exigence for the entire 1AC, which means that the evidence that they have listed is actually our uniqueness evidence. Now, okay, NLRB oversight deficit, I'm pretty sure dropped that it is key to counterclaim picks out of it, which means that they don't get any of this. First warrant is harm. Absent interagency review, states would fail to prevent economic spillover onto consumers without trading off that with union demands. That's our positive evidence. Second is info sharing and expertise. Only the NLRB and DOL have statistical knowledge and expertise over industry-specific labor markets, unionization rates, law violations, expert analysis, etc., which solves mergers, which is our Hafiz evidence. Anything else? NLRB. The case outweighs and turns economic conflict and emerging tech make runaway climate change inevitable, but they cannot turn the case. They have no warrant or card for turning the econ or any of our other impacts, which means they don't get to do so in the 2NR, no terminal to ESGs, and we conceded defense to most of it, which means it doesn't matter. All their cards, all their uniqueness cards are from the Biden administration. No card says that the Trump administration cares about whistleblowers, which means that Northwestern has read a DA somehow worse than AM radio. Their Grunig card says that the NLRB already has a massive backlog. Grunig 25. We have seen our backlog case grow to the point where it's no longer sustainable, and NLRB info shares now, which proves no resource sharing. Laros 23. Which I'm agree with that. NLRB did info sharing. Okay, they also dropped somehow that they also dropped that the NLRB lacks quorum, which drops the DA to 0 because it means that they literally don't have the capacity to enforce, but durable fiat resolves it, which means that this is a unique piece of offense that only the AFF can solve, which is actually, and weirdly enough, a link turn to the disadvantage. Okay, warming, is it existential? Crops aren't sensitive to temp changes. Sea level rise wouldn't affect the majority of land in previous examples of 12-degree warming. Prove we're resilient, that's ordered. Their indirect impacts indite is wrong. They don't cause extinction, and there was no explanation for it. And their epistemic indite is backwards. They have an incentive to publish crazy headlines to get clicks. Tipping points are real. Blank 23. Conversation not identify global tipping point from harassment. Force to influence magnitudes. Small FCC reports rely on careful terminology when in scientific detail. The reporting results in the tipping points. Cut that card at tipping points.
There was a card you read on TV that was not in the doc.
There's like a string.
Oh, that was the string.
I put that one in the doc. Did I not save it? The Marks at all the 3 card?
I can send it out.
In our arbitrary.
Here, I'll send it out.
We'll worry about
I might have sent it and then saved it. That might have been the problem. I'm sorry about that.
that. Don't
I
worry.
don't know if I will.
I'm good with the body.
Yeah.
Should be sent.
I'll let you know when I get it. Yeah, okay.
You read the long evidence, right? On warming, like the defense card, right?
Yeah, I read it and I cut it at climate tipping points.
Okay.
Northwestern gauntlet this term.
Have y'all debated Northwestern? Who else have you debated?
Round 2 we debated LR. Round 3 we debated HP.
Okay.
So 3 of the 5 rounds.
That's crazy.
There
Nathan's are funny.
There was a point last year where Binghamton CT debated Kansas teams like 30% of their debates. Yeah, it was so funny. Like at Northwestern, I think they debated Kansas 5 times. None of us were happy about it, but yeah. Did you all drive here from Chicago or did you fly? Oh yeah, that's right. You guys are lucky. You get to fly everywhere.
Not Kentucky.
Not Kentucky. Well, that's like 2 hours away or something, right? How close?
7?
Oh, I have no idea geography.
It's not close.
I did not survive an 8-hour drive to Northwestern.
Where's Western Kentucky?
It's like, you know, Kentucky? It's like the western part. It's like in the middle of nowhere.
What city?
Bowling Green.
Oh, okay. Heard of that.
Do you know where that is though?
West.
There you go.
Central time, so don't get it twisted.
CT?
Yeah.
I'm big on CT.
My man.
What's the order?
The order is going to be topicality.
Cool. Okay.
So everybody be out. 1 second.
Topical forms of strength and bargaining rights, which is limited to wages, hours, and conditions of employment. All of our NEG offenses got dropped, which is used explode limits of bargaining over ESG automation or even offshoring. It undermines NEG prep because the NEG arsenal is predicated off the subject matter of bargaining. Everything like the econ DA is predicated off things like wages and employment, but moving it to under other things explodes the topic and explodes all limits. It undermines education, which has gone conceded because the core of the topic is inequality, which the AFF model can skirt out of and talk about things like automation or ESG or literally any form of subject matter like offshoring, which is completely divorced from the topic. Or one of our St. Antoine evidence will end this debate because it says that AFF will be about anything and everything in a world in which subject matter can be changed, which not only hoses the negative arsenal because it is conditioned on exactly what the subject matter is. For example, our DA's linked for rates in econ are based on increasing wages, or our link to the CAP K is about creating an employer-employee relationship over certain bargaining conditions, and all those things are completely hosed under their model of debate. Imagine it, every single app would just break on a new form of a collective bargaining on some weird, odd subject matter like housing or other things, rent control. All these different things would require, even if they do link to some arguments, a massive negative prep burden, which makes it impossible. That goes conceded. They drop prep burden, which should frame the ballot. Now they say only our evidence is in the only app evidence is in the context of CBR. I do not know what you're saying. Because your card does not say rights. It just says collective bargaining. But the actual part of the definition is talking about unionization. But unionization does not require CBR, which means the definition should just be wholly thrown out. They say NEG definitions are inconsistent. It's a non-argument. Only we have a definition of collective bargaining rights. But this card is not about subject matter in general. It's just saying CBs are generally vague. But only we have precise legal definitions with years of backing. They say narrow constraints. This is not defining strengthening. I mean, not defining strengthen. The card is defining strengthening. They put strengthening in like 4 texts, the last ing, which means it should be thrown out because it's not a definition of a precise definition. So if you believe precision is important, then you should just throw the definition out. Now they say ours is not predictable nor precise. Debatability should always outweigh because a precise topic would collapse the activity when we would have no ground on the negative to be able to engage in anything. It would collapse education because even if the affirmative is legally precise, which teaches us legal means, the negative would never be able to engage on those grounds, which makes it impossible to actually learn because debate is only good insofar as we have contestation between opponents over a well-centered topic. Now, they say precision is a crush for the NEG. Wrong. It is a crush for the app. It's a crush for the NEG. Their card has zero intent to define. It has no good quals, and it is about Europe. It is not talking about collective bargaining rights, but collective bargaining. But the part of the definition that they've extended is literally not defining collective bargaining at all. It is defining unionization, which can be external to collective bargaining rights. For example, the NCAA union is not covered by NLRB collective bargaining rights because they don't have a right to unionize, but they've still created a union between themselves and created a bargaining unit, which expands the scope of the topic to literally be about anything under their definition because it wouldn't even require the right to bargain. Now, they say the card is a legal definition. This is a non-argument. argument because they've not implicated why legal definitions are necessarily better, but they've dropped our definition is backed by decades of legislative and court precedent, which is our 1 hour English evidence. It means that we access precision and predictability so much better because only our evidence is one, defining CBR, and only definition in the entire debate that defines the resolutional wording and strengthening CBR, but more importantly, it's backed by literally every single court case ever, because the only thing that the NLRB is able to go over is wages and conditions of employment and hours. All of those things are the only things they're able to go over. It's the fact of the matter for decades of precedent and should inform the rest of the topic, because we should be debating about how the NLRB functions now and how changes should be made into it. Now, functional limits, you can cross by all the grounds up above. Econ is in the winner because this has like inflation and discount. Presume the plan strengthens labor in the core existing areas of tension and management. Their inter unpredictably shifts to from any aspect of firm governance like sustainability, offshoring, immigrant labor, etc., where the app can monopolize prep and strategically deny core net ground. They jump our blanket answers to why functional limits fail. Teams will be incentivized to prep good ones, good for what's asked to be fact checked in a single debate, but apps that kill generics because they can't be fact checked. B, there isn't a single universal strategy. If there's one in the politics scene which they dodge because they'd be able to codify the scroll, or use a minuscule tweak to do what unions can bargain over, which can certainly doesn't link to anything because it's not contentious, and Congress doesn't care about things like merger review or individual firm governance. I'll go through well, actually, first, I'll go through their limits here. One, bargaining bad, not responsive. If the app doesn't bargain over core labor policy, we have links. We have no links to what you bargain over because it's a new subject matter. Because the answers to bargaining bad have to be about the subject matter themselves. Econ was answered above because links are predicated on things like wages. The subject matter states no quorum is solved by fiat, which they said literally on the other page. Process gets serious. They create debates on Reddit about process countermeasures was a tiny change. And dropping education is a crush here because it proves the debate should be about centered around the topic. Forcing reliance on hypergenerics, Michigan might enjoy those debates, but no one will, no one else will, which proves our offense outweighs. Now Cap K dropped, it loses the perm, and nobody wants to have Cap good bad debates for a year. We wouldn't learn anything, and links are predicated off the wage relationship. Link uniqueness. Unions already have raise issue, any issue they want to do in the negotiation process. Doesn't take our offense because unions don't have the right to bargain over. Our Martin evidence is phenomenal because it demonstrates their intro allows the app to codify the squo insofar as they give rights that the union already want to negotiate, which decimates the link unions for every single generic who creates salient educational debates. Now, reasonability might have been light in the 1 AR, but it was lighter in the 1 AR, and they still dropped both for our sub points. And more importantly, Wilkins, I think you're horrible for it. They aren't reasonable if we win our offense because reasonability necessitates an adequate interim. Second, default to competing interims. It creates a race to the top and encourages the best, most well-researched debate. You should find the best model for a year's worth of research. Anything else causes substance. Try to key is a question of models. So you should check out ours being better. Offense outweighs is the most intuitive, the most limited topic. It's good because limits outweigh everything. More importantly, conceding all net offense means that they're wholly unreasonable. It's a bad standard. It's subjective, which means judges have to intervene and can't set a model for the topic because the combination of all reasonable interpretations is a total limits breakdown, which answers their impact framing arguments. Again, conceded education, conceded massive limits explosion, no way out on reasonability because they're obviously unreasonable, but even if you apply that, massive judge intervention.
Do you have time? Yes.
Starting now.
Can you get a card back right now?
Yeah, we're on it.
Reasonability is the locus of your ballot. The bar for the NEG shouldn't be winning by an inch but a mile. Competing in terms incentivizes risk-averse 2Ns to take the easy path instead of doing case-specific research. That turns any education argument they could make. Even if learning about words in a vacuum might be somewhat valuable, it trades off with topic-specific research, which is the reason we're all here. Else, nothing else separates this activity from just spending our weekends reading out of the dictionary. Refuse to give us the death penalty when they've had a case-specific strategy they could have extended. The punishment must fit the crime, and their offense is heavily outweighed by the lack of precision in their interpretation. We are reasonable. We didn't drop their standards, and they haven't explained why limits in ground outweigh substance crowd out, especially when they're incredibly light on our functional limits. We also answered judge intervention. You being horrible for it, ironically, is it self-interventionary, but it's also just an impact calculus question. They need to prove their impact outweighs. So now extend our interpretation. Strengthen means improving collective bargaining, resources, skills, and organization structures. That's despigulary. Precision must outweigh. Only establishing the most exact legal definition can direct what is perceived as the resolution, which guides predictable research. That turns their offense. Limited topics aren't unique if the AF has no idea what they have to do to be topical, and it worsens clash within those limits. Think about when they said about the frame of debate was prep burdens. That's magnified infinitely more if neither side knows what the other will say because they have not read a precise grounded in the literature. You should only accept the most precise. They'll always have an internal link to predictability, whether it's a court case or a scholar, which justifies every crackpot interpretation on the internet. Their limits turn was just saying that the NEG can never engage, but this isn't a reason why it turns precision. This is just a reason why their impact is important, but they drop the reason that precision outweighs. You should reject the cult of debatability and instead prefer our standards. Our card is far better. We've defined what collective bargaining and strengthening mean in tandem, which is much better than their evidence, which is Frankensteining definitions together from different cases in order to crowd the AF out. We answered their indite of the evidence, and they just extended it through ink. It being from Europe doesn't matter because it still has intent to define about how collective bargaining rights work. It improves the international consensus component of it, which means that we are the the most precise definition because it matches up with consensus broadly. In their argument that it's not about unionization, but it specifically is about collective bargaining. Their only examples about how it's different is about the NCAA union, which, if that's a potential AF, I have no clue what impact that solves, which means that it doesn't matter, but we're still precise. Independently, they dropped our Kuravila evidence. That indicates that collective bargaining is a process that includes variations, and any other interpretation of them are not realistic. It says, quote, any assessment of collective bargaining requires an understanding of the variety of institutions and processes. That demonstrates that their model isn't a precise reading of the resolution, which means that we control all of the offense in the debate because their lack of precision will always lead to a form of substance crowd out that makes it impossible to debate. Now, the defense component of this, they had a case-specific strategy with the NLRB decide, which they chose not to go for instead of T, which should supercharge our reasonability offense, improves our functional limits offense, correct? Because it proves that there is stable negative ground for them to work with, because every affirmative would have to go through the NLRB, which that is not answered. But I'll do our examples now. They bargaining bad. Every AF must increase bargaining, which guarantees them a stable case turn in every AF. The smaller the bargaining, the worse the internal links are, which means that the AF either dies in the prep room or loses to a 20-plank advantage counterplan. That means AFs about ESGs or offshoring need a bargaining key war, which means they can pick out of it, which is what the negative did in this debate, which proves that there is no limits explosion, that they will have the ability to debate this. The economy dissents. There are a wealth of conservative hacks out there who spend all day writing about how evil unions are and how bad they are for the economy, which guarantees them a massive file with a litany of cards for them to dump in the block and use, which links to every affirmative. Their only real answer to this is that minuscule tweaks would not link, but that's wrong. Plenty of evidence exists that speaks about union power broadly and how that would impact the economy, and perceptual links would be able to take that out. And issues about minor subjects lack any real support from a solvency advocate that's actually qualified, which again means that it would die in the prep room. They also dropped the impasse internal link from the 1AR. Apps under our model have to create new mandatory subjects, which the NEG can impact her by saying that shutting down business is bad, which would link to every single one of the examples they give about ESGs and other subjects. subjects now states the smaller the AFF, the more contrived the deficit is, along with a lack of quorum means that the case for preemption is low. The only answer they had was that we fiated out a quorum, but there's no reason why you can't have a debate over what fiat means about overriding quorum. But they dropped that there's a lack of preemption deficit for most of these acts, which means that the wealth of literature out there is able to about the necessity for states to act because of the lack of preemption means that it's a core generic, and it allows the politics dissent to be combined with it, because there is definitely enough literature out there about how labor reform broadly is able to link, and there's plenty of cards out there to support that. And process counter plans. They can't do takesy-backsies. They read a card in the block that the devil is in the details and that we should focus on the process of implementation vis-a-vis bargaining rights, which means that they can't reinvent an education DA, especially when the 2-1R does not mention this specific example. The collective sum of all of this means that there is a sufficient negative ground under our interpretation that even if it might rely on generics, it proves that there's enough engagement for them and it would not explode the prep burden, because even all of the examples that they have would likely die in the prep room or just get ethered by all of this, which means that there is no limits explosion or offense.
Debate, Joe. Next card back shot. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Gary won't yell at me. I'm in 25 seconds before this. Okay. Cool. There's 10 judges ahead of me. This is bullshit. Okay. Are we all good? Okay. This was a really awesome debate. I really enjoyed every speech, every part of it. You all are awesome. Thank you for letting me judge this early in the morning. I voted NEG. I think a massive limits to set. The precision link turn outweighs a small risk of a precision link and substance crowd out. First, I think limits is huge. There's 2 internal links in the 2NR. The first is the apps can bargain and change subject matter to quote literally anything, rate control, housing, offshoring, etc. Do have an answer to that, but the other internal link that I don't have an answer to is apps can affirm the status quo because most of these actions are quote already handled by unions, just not able to be bargained over, which dropping the 2AR and kind of frames how much of the functional limits often is applicable because if they can affirm the status quo, they probably don't link. B, I don't think functional limits lowers the risk of this enough. Broadly, the 2AR spends most of their time on specific examples, but does not handle the broad 1NR, 2NR answer that there is, quote, not a single universal tragedies and apps that can quantify the status quo, which means I'm skeptical initially that functional limits is sufficient for precision to outweigh. Even if I think the NEG beats every functional limit or has enough defense to them, that I think it doesn't really matter. Bargaining bad, 2NR explicitly says you have links to the subject being bargained over. 2AR is just but we have the impact terms. You can always impact on this, but it doesn't drops that would require unique amounts of research, etc. That is impossible to happen. Econ disads, 2NR says that links are, quote, only contextual to wage and employment demands, which frames out the answer that even if there are economists who hate unions, think unions are the worst thing ever, those things would not change as a result of new subject matter apps. Therefore, the links would not be applicable to the massive econ file that you could write that says unions is bad. Impact does not answer the no universal tragedy stuff. So even if there is, quote, subject matter that can be impact termed, it's not sufficient because there's not a universal option that they can go for. States drop no politics link because Congress does not care about subject matter changes, etc. Means that there's no net benefit, even if there is a massive preemption deficit. Or the other way around, there's no massive preemption deficit. Quorum. I agree with the app that fiat is irrelevant because you could have read it as a disad, but that does not A, solve status quo codification apps because I wouldn't change the quorum, or B, I don't have the 1AR saying you can read your disad, not no quorum, which means I cannot give this you could read the NLRB trade-off disad as offense, as defense. Finally, process counter plans. I think topic education outweighs. The process counter plans are bad. I don't have the NEG saying this devil in the detail stuff, and I think the card you are referencing is their education stuff, which is about discussions of inequality and the process of CBR to solve it, which is flagged at the top. It's a specific impact to their model that yours obviates. Second, I think precision is small and link turn. I don't think the app interpretation is not the most precise. It's about Europe. The NEG is impacting out this domestic international distinction. App is we cite a bunch of countries, but there's not a why to that. But the NEG is this is bad. It's not about U.S. law. Only we have cards defining CBR, the core precedent, legislative precedent in the context of the U.S. in the past, which is what matters. Which is an impact that I'm just missing. Or impact explanation that I'm missing in the 2AR. Second, it's defining unionization, not CBRs, which is another component of this thing that's dropped in the 2AR, which means I am skeptical that it is more precise than the next. Second, I think the NEG interpretation is much more precise and predictable because it's based off of core precedent, legislative precedent, etc., which is the English evidence that I don't think the 2AR ever has an on-point answer to. That the NEG interpretation is more subjective based on what the U.S. has done in the past. 3, I don't think NEG cards are inconsistent matters if they want a large enough link turn predictability, which I think they have, which is the English stuff, because this is just a link to substance crowd. I think competing interpretations is better, but this debate is irrelevant in a world where the NEG has won a link turn to substance crowd out. If I conclude the NEG is one of link turn to precision, that's the link to precision to substance crowd out, and they control that. Don't think intervention is really answered in the 2AR. Reasonability requires judge intervention to determine if they care more about a model debate or substance that could have been debated better. What I have in my flow for the 2AR is just as we did answer intervention in the 1AR, and then immediately goes on to them just saying, them saying you are bad for reasonability is interventionist, but does not provide defense beyond that to the impacted intervention, which means I think that reasonability is probably a worse model debate. Even if I were to conclude you won massive amounts of precision, etc., I think limits would outweigh. That was a lot, and I talked really fast, so questions?
I think that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, the 2AC to top count needs to be a lot better, but were there any other kind of notes on the 2AC?
2AC, I'm gonna say something really funny. I think you should have straight turn this politics instead. I think we should have just like not read any impact or turn link defense and made them have to do like link debating on like floor time bullshit. Or better yet, like cut like 2 like AM radio bad cards and like impact turn them. We have to explain this like flow is key to solve extinction shit. Because like there's a lot of people who the reason why AM radio is being taken out because it's just run by like conservative and like Christian talk show hosts, which is probably like way worse than whatever the hell this card says. And
Synthesizing the flow between different cars.
okay, thank you.
Whatever the hell that is.
Yeah, but like I don't know. This is a conversation I had with Jared and Ethan for like 30 minutes this morning. I was like, how can we impact turn this nonsense? But besides that, maybe less on vagueness. Did you read a card on vagueness?
I don't think I did.
No, you did not. That was something else. They read a card on vagueness. Never mind. Maybe less on cap, a little bit more on trade-off or trade-off or the mergers, like the advantage counterplan or merger acquisition counterplan, whatever. States could also have less because if either you straight turn politics or they're just like not going for it, so like 2 carded deficits on states is irrelevant for like when the only net benefit is the AM radio politics that's in it. Yeah. But yeah, besides that, no, I thought it was largely pretty good.
In terms of the 1AR, how do you think it could have been better on T? And do you also have like any other extraneous comments for?
I thought the 1AR on everything but T was fantastic. I think, besides one thing, which is I think that they technically dropped that the counterplan links the net benefit, so you could have also extended that. But besides that, 1AR coverage on counterplan disav was phenomenal. Like picking up the quorum thing was awesome, or the lax quorum thing. For T specifically, let me look. I think could definitely use way more. I think instead of extending, and this is true of the 2AR, instead of extending every single functional limit and then spreading yourself thin by like, here's this one, and then this one, and then this one, answer the top level, like no universal strategy, codify the status quo stuff, and then extend 1 or 2 specific pieces of universal offense that teams can read, and then just debate that out, answer how that answers every form of unlimited app they give. So like if there's a rent control app, an NCAA app, whatever, how that off that ground ensures they can debate those apps would be helpful. But as he has now, it's like both 1AR and 2AR is like or functional limit, functional limit, functional limit, functional limit, but it doesn't end up really debating back at what the NEG is saying. It's a little rough. Probably a better answer to the 1AR could probably, and 2AR could use a better answer to like the link turn to precision predictability. Like 1AR answers it by like, they've read a predictability block. We're about precision. This is distinct. But then the 2AR does not extend this like the impact to this distinction. So either A, the 2AR should extend the impact to this distinction, or B, the 1AR and 2AR should have a better answer to the link turn. Which I think that's like, you just need like an international consensus preferable. Our interpretation is the international consensus, which outweighs. Their card is just like defining what has happened in the 90s for what CBRs are. That doesn't mean it's like what every author is saying, what the literature base is saying, what the most predictable model of like what ask or read is, just because of things that happened in the past, etc.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think I'm all good, thank you.
Northwestern, if y'all have anything.
I'm good. Yeah. Block construction. And, like the 2NC was not like fantastic on dropping some stuff, but was there like any like construction stuff that?
I thought besides the fact that you dropped some stuff, 2NC was largely pretty good. Yeah, I just like that's like literally really the only thing is like you just like dropped like defense at 0 to decide and like deficits and counterplan that were like a little rough.
Wait, did I drop? Wait, which defense is 0 to
The quorum thing.
the quorum stuff. Yeah.
Like that's
Sorry,
like that's
the defense.
Yeah, that's like 0. I was like, I like saw you just like skipped over it in the doc. I was like, oh no.
Yeah, no, I got you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So great, appreciate it.